In this video, I'm going to introduce you to your rights and responsibilities regarding discrimination, harassment, and bullying as it pertains to Australian workplaces. And I'm going to go through some steps that you can follow when speaking up about these issues at work. Employees and employers have moral and legal rights and responsibilities when it comes to how they treat people and how they are treated themselves in the workplace. This is something that all employees should understand. Managers especially must understand employee rights and responsibilities in managing these issues. In managing it effectively, it means less risk for the business, better staff engagement, and a stronger culture. Ahoy, Peter here from Bryter Training. Thanks for joining me in this video as I explore the topic of workplace discrimination, harassment, and bullying. If you haven't already, please remember to hit like and subscribe. It helps us know that we're on the right track and the support we get is really appreciated. In the modern age, both individuals and the company can be held legally accountable for breaches in workplace health and safety legislation. And I didn't know simply isn't a valid excuse. So keep that in mind. This stuff doesn't just relate to the company. You as an individual can be held legally accountable. In Victoria, for example, workplace bullying is even considered a criminal offence in some cases. So it's absolutely important to know your rights and your responsibilities. It's especially important for managers. They need to be aware of their own behaviours, how they are perceived by staff with their interactions, and they need to ensure that they take conscious steps to promote, support, and enforce correct behaviours within their teams. In not having adequate training and processes, the team is open to problems with engagement and culture, even legal and financial repercussions. And to be blunt, this is something that isn't done well in many places, and too many people do not know their rights and responsibilities. Now, this can also be used against employees, where bullying becomes a standard management style, and it can create unnecessary stress and expense for organisations. So just like these ingredients come together to create something even better, legislation and workplace health and safety combine with your organisation to create culture, reputation, and effective processes. As both an employee and employer in Australia, there are many different laws in place to protect all parties from unfair and unsafe practices. So this video is designed as an introduction to these elements and to help you become aware of your own rights and responsibilities in the workplace. Legislation is amended to reflect changes within society. So these recommendations are general and they're based on rules that are in place as of today, which is November 2020. It's always worth taking time to review updated publications or consult with an expert in the field prior to taking action on these topics. This video will, however, provide you with a framework to help your planning and will include some links and resources in the description below to help you with your understanding of these topics. Now, as an employee of an organisation, your business should take steps to ensure that they provide and maintain a safe working environment, and your responsibility is to take reasonable care of your own health and safety and for the health and safety of people around you. You also need to cooperate with the business in understanding and adhering to workplace health and safety policies, processes, and legislation. And this isn't just the physical health and safety, but mental well-being as well. So it's in everyone's best interest for an employer to create clear policies and procedures around behavioural standards that align with Australian and state law. Now, whether an organisation has internal policies, they're still bound by the legislation that's in place. And if a company does have internal policies in place, then they're required to demonstrate appropriate support of them in the form of training and, of course, adherence to them. So in this session, I'm going to introduce you to 4 common areas that all employees have rights and responsibilities under that they need to understand. So that's discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, and bullying. Then we will also go through the process of how to raise a complaint or speak up about an issue. So the first topic is equal employment opportunity and diversity. So equal employment opportunity basically comes down to everyone being treated fairly and equally when they're considered for employment decisions, such as hiring, promotions, termination, or compensation. Now, diversity in the workplace means having employees from a wide range of backgrounds. Many businesses will have EEO and diversity policies and employee handbooks, and it's really important to understand that the policies support legislation, and if a company has policies, then they need to demonstrate that they actively promote and support them with appropriate training and by actually following them. If you have a diverse workplace, you can benefit from the different talents, experiences, and perspectives of your employees. Think about the differences such as these. While you should certainly hire the best person for the job, organisations do need to be aware of personal biases, whether they're conscious or other, and should consider the benefits of diversity in the workplace. There are also benefits to bringing in people who have experienced different problems, life experiences, and who have exposure to different ways of thinking. The best way I've heard it explained is that we all see the world through this really narrow lens based on our own experience. So diversity means that we uncover more of the map or the world around us through a whole range of different perspectives so that we become better equipped to deal with people and businesses. There are some situations where an employer can request people with a certain background, so whereas discrimination laws in Australia prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, including in connection with employment, all of these laws do contain exceptions. There are two main types of exceptions which can apply, such as in the case of targeted recruitment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So special measures provisions, where a step is taken to address disadvantage experienced by a group, and genuine occupational requirement provisions, such as if the job was, say, to include writing policies which affect a particular group, then you may be able to hire specifically from that group. As always, check with a HR expert, lawyer, or government advisor if you have any questions on that. So there are just certain things that we shouldn't tolerate, and it just so happens that they're also illegal, so that's a good thing. Discrimination is treating or proposing to treat someone unfavourably because of a personal characteristic which is protected by the law. Now, this includes bullying someone based on those characteristics. In Australia, it's unlawful to discriminate on the basis of a number of protected attributes, including age, disability, race, sex, intersex status, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Australia's federal anti-discrimination laws are contained in the following legislation, and it includes things like age, disability, racial, or sex discrimination acts. Each state will also have relevant legislation, such as in Victoria, you have the Equal Opportunity Act of 2010, which is their anti-discrimination law, and that protects people from discrimination and harassment in various areas of public life, including work. Basically, it's illegal to discriminate against people based on certain grounds. It's worth familiarising yourself with these acts or consult with someone who can explain them. So like I said, discrimination is treating someone unfavourably because of a personal characteristic protected by law. These grounds include, but they're not limited to, a whole range of classifications such as these. There's no justifying, there's no buts. If you treat someone unfavourably because of one of these characteristics, then you are discriminating and you are in the wrong. Discrimination can be direct or indirect. So direct means that you are treated differently because of one of the protected characteristics. For example, perhaps you're not promoted or hired because of your race or sexuality. Maybe the HR department or manager says that in their experience, those people are difficult to work with. Indirect discrimination occurs when an unreasonable requirement or a condition is imposed that disadvantages a person or a group because of a personal characteristic. Now, unless there's a really clear business requirement for it, it could include things like everyone needing to start at a certain time, which could indirectly discriminate against parents, or requiring everyone to stand up for their shift, which could indirectly discriminate against people of a certain age or physical condition. The important thing to watch out for with discrimination is that it is sometimes based on unconscious bias, or the discrimination is ignored in the workplace and then it becomes entrenched as part of the company's culture, and that is a really bad thing to have happen. So always stop and question the decisions that are being made. So continuing on with the theme of things that we shouldn't tolerate and that are also illegal, we have harassment. Now, unlawful harassment is a type of discrimination. It's any behaviour that is not wanted or not welcome, likely to humiliate or seriously embarrass, offend, or intimidate someone. And it's based on personal attributes protected by law, such as sex or race. So a single act of harassment is sufficient to give rise to a complaint, regardless of whether it was intended to hurt or humiliate or offend. Harassment can be written, verbal, or physical. Now, there are many types of harassment that are independent from these protected attributes. Things like psychological harassment, such as isolating someone or belittling them, or power harassment, where managers use their position to harass with things like unrealistic or demeaning demands. The fact is, behaviours like these, especially if repeated, ultimately become bullying and quite simply shouldn't exist in the workplace. I personally have a zero tolerance for people who use their position to bully or harass less senior staff, hence we're doing this video. Harassment covers a wide range of behaviours, including but not limited to things like this, and they can occur in person, via a third person, or online. So keep in mind, harassment should not be confused with advice or counselling in relation to work performance of an employee. Fair performance management practices do not constitute harassment. It can sometimes be difficult to determine if it's harassment, if it's management style, or if it's their personality. So if you have any concerns, raise it with your manager, with HR, or seek guidance externally. What's interesting with harassment is that it's based on how someone else feels, not what you intended. So I tend to hear things like, back in my day you could make a joke and people wouldn't get offended. It's all too PC now. So if you've ever heard someone say that, my response is always, is it that they didn't mind back in your day, or just that they didn't really have a voice? Do you really think most women liked being objectified or touched? That gay people liked being called names? Or that people found it funny for their culture or skin colour to be used as a prop in a joke? Or did they just not have a voice or anyone who listened, because if they spoke up they were accused of being too sensitive? But it can be a challenge. In Australia especially, we tend to have a really relaxed attitude to things and a lot of mateship, and we tend to cut down the tall poppy. Also, things constantly change. What was okay a decade ago is now totally inappropriate. The fact is, you are not living back in your day. We live today. And today there is a greater awareness and a broader definition of respect. It doesn't matter what your personal opinion is. It matters that you adapt and operate within the system. So here's a few common statements and myths around harassment. Firstly, people who get offended just can't take a joke or are too sensitive. And the reality is, it's not funny if it's at someone else's expense. Doesn't matter what you think, it's how they feel. Myth number 2, you should take it as a compliment. The reality is, if it's not welcome and it's offensive, it's not a compliment. Myth number 3, they're one of our top performers, so we really can't take action. And sadly, we do hear this one quite a bit. The reality is, if one of your top performers or anyone in your company is breaching these rules or acting inappropriately, then a lack of action now is going to cost you a lot more down the track. And quite simply, it's wrong behaviour. Myth number 4, it's all gone too far, we can't say or do anything these days. The reality is, if it's respectful and safe, there's plenty of things you can say. You just can't say things which are offensive. Myth number 5, I don't want to get involved, it's none of my business. And this again is a very common one that we come across. The reality is, it's everybody's business. The standard that we walk past is the standard that we accept. So if we recognise behaviours like this taking place, we have an obligation and a responsibility to call it out and to speak up. And myth number 6, harassment, discrimination only happens to straight cis women. And the reality is, it happens to people of all genders and all sexual orientations. When it comes to harassment, I've heard all sorts of justifications and excuses. These here, they're not excuses. That includes using words or calling people names and justifying it because they're in the Oxford Dictionary. No one is disputing the existence of the word. They're saying that your use of it is thoughtless and unprofessional. I should probably add being a tool to this list as well then. So let's just put it out there are things that just shouldn't be happening. The simple fact is, it's pretty clear. If someone is offended, then they are offended. And if they're offended based on a defined framework and a set of protected characteristics, then guess what? The claim of harassment is justified. Stop blaming and start fixing it. So one that most people have heard of and are familiar with is sexual harassment, which is behaviour of a sexual nature that is unwelcome or unasked for, and that a reasonable person would have anticipated would offend, humiliate, or intimidate. Sexual harassment includes, but again not limited to, behaviour that creates a hostile or intimidating work environment, such as unwelcome touching, staring, pictures, intrusive questions, or comments. Sexual harassment can be physical, verbal, or written, and it can occur in person, on paper, or by phone. Basically, the medium doesn't matter, and it has nothing to do with mutual attraction or friendship. So quite simply, sexual harassment is unlawful, including under the Equal Opportunity Act of 2010 in Victoria and the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984 for the Commonwealth, and it's prohibited. And yes, it can happen to all genders and can be done by all genders. The rules are the same for everybody. So to recap harassment, there's a whole bunch of things that fit within the guidelines and that people may find offensive, so check your behaviour, read the room and listen to the feedback. And if you see it, be part of the solution and call it out. Not only is it the right thing to do legally, it's just the right thing to do. So we've had a look at discrimination and harassment, now we need to move into the related topic of bullying. It's something that more people are aware of, however sadly I hear a lot of people still joking about it, and as we'll see, it is not a joking matter. So what is it? Workplace bullying is repeated unreasonable behaviour toward a worker or a group of workers, which creates a risk to health and safety. Bullying involves behaviour that is repeated over time. Your employer is absolutely entitled to direct and control how work is done. Genuine and reasonable disciplinary procedures are not bullying. For example, objective comments about observable performance deficiencies do not constitute workplace bullying. Constructively delivered feedback or counselling is also not bullying. So a bit more detail, bullying isn't just the aggressive or physical threats. Bullying can include verbal abuse such as swearing, threatening, insulting, or continually and unreasonably criticising and name-calling. It can include threats regarding your position at work, unjustifiably threatening dismissal or performance management, or saying things like, if you don't do what I say, I'll have to write up a formal warning. It can include personal behaviours such as practical jokes, threatening body language or violence, and it can include management styles, unreasonably undermining work performance, deliberately withholding work-related information or resources, changing people's rosters as a form of punishment, control, or to make their life difficult, or supplying incorrect information or inappropriate interference with personal belongings or work equipment. Bullying is not genuine and reasonable disciplinary procedures and genuine and reasonable performance management. But of course, reasonable performance management has a traceable history, it has a clear process, and it has documented evidence. Bullying is not constructively delivered feedback or counselling or directing and controlling how work is done. And it's not coaching and training where that coaching or training is delivered equally and is designed to support legislation, policy, or an identified performance need. And a difference of opinion or a disagreement is not bullying. However, in some cases, conflict that is not managed may escalate to the point where it becomes workplace bullying. Never underestimate the impacts of bullying in the workplace. Repeated negative behaviours against an employee is a major concern and should be 100% supported and resolved. To give an example, in Victoria, Brodie's law was introduced into the anti-bullying legislation in 2011 after the tragic suicide of a young woman as a result of workplace bullying. So Brodie Panlock, who was 19, was subjected to relentless bullying from co-workers at a Victorian cafe where she worked. The ongoing intimidation, humiliation, harassment and bullying by her workmates just proved too much for her and ended with her taking her own life. So as a result of Brodie's law, serious bullying is now a criminal offence in Victoria, allowing serious workplace and online bullies to be jailed. Quite simply, do not ignore it. If you are being bullied, address it and seek support where needed. There are resources listed in the description below for different support services. And if you see it or know about it and don't take action, then you're also complicit, especially as a manager. If there is a complaint of bullying, then be objective, take it seriously, and take steps to resolve it. It's too important to ignore. Never tell someone to drop it, and never assume that it's not a serious issue. Businesses and individuals have been fined hundreds of thousands of dollars and face jail time, so it's something everyone needs to be responsible for, and there are things worse than fines that can happen if it's not managed well. You are absolutely allowed to point out if you feel threatened, bullied, or harassed, and within the workplace there should be no victimisation. So what does that mean? Victimisation is discriminating against someone, harassing them, or otherwise treating them unfairly because they've made a discrimination or a harassment complaint under applicable state or federal law, they intend to make such a complaint, or they've helped somebody else in relation to a complaint like that. And quite simply, it is illegal. So if you make a genuine, valid complaint, then know that you are protected and you have the right to be protected. Keep in mind, if you make a valid complaint and someone responds to you with threats, gossips with another person about the situation, or takes any other negative action as a direct result of your complaint, for example, cutting your shifts, changing rosters, then they may have broken the law and you can raise a complaint about victimisation. Even if the initial complaint is dismissed, the victimisation is still a completely separate incident. Now, within your business, you are legally and ethically protected if you wish to raise a concern. There are 4 things that should be observed, and if you're a manager, please pay extra attention to make sure that this is done. However, as an employee who may have a concern, this is what you should expect when you do actually raise a complaint. First of all, confidentiality. Only those with a genuine role to play in helping to investigate or resolve a complaint should know of its details or discuss any of the details. Anyone found to have engaged in gossip or innuendo about a complaint may actually be subject to a complaint of victimisation and is at risk of disciplinary action or legal action under the laws. So next, you can expect impartiality. All parties will usually have a chance to tell their side of the story. So no assumptions will be made, and to the extent possible, no action will be taken until all relevant information has been collected and considered. Now, of course, there should be no repercussions. An employer cannot take action against anyone for making or helping someone to make a complaint that is genuine and is not malicious. This does not prevent your employer from taking action against employees where there are performance or misconduct issues. But again, that is a clear documented process. And finally, you can expect promptness. Complaints will be investigated and dealt with as quickly as possible in the circumstances. Keep in mind, we all have a role to play, so do not dismiss how people feel. Do not ignore bullying that's occurring in the workplace. Remember, we're talking about genuine cases of bullying and harassment that meet the definitions. I personally believe that if you feel offended, threatened, or bullied, then you should act. It's the right thing to do, it raises awareness, and it stamps this sort of behaviour out of our society. However, keep in mind that it needs to be genuine. Just to put it out there, if someone thinks that these laws only go one way, there are checks in place to protect people from unfounded or malicious accusations, and the Fair Work Commission won't automatically assume that an employee's hurt, embarrassment, or humiliation has been caused by bullying. They consider an employee's own resilience and sensitivity that may be a factor in assessing bullying complaints, and a response to a bullying complaint that's too swift can mean that appropriate assessment hasn't been done properly. So they will always recommend that employers don't rush into a decision, particularly if the evidence isn't very strong. In short, you have rights and responsibilities, but the system recognises differences in styles, personalities, and attempts to protect all parties fairly and equally. So if you have experienced workplace bullying and harassment, do not let it go. Why do I think you should address it? While I appreciate it can be really scary and intimidating, and people may tell you things like, don't rock the boat, or your career could be in jeopardy, there's a couple of things to consider. Firstly, the behaviour that you tolerate is the standard that will be present in your organisation. That also sets the standard for how you will be treated, and you deserve to be treated with respect. If it were a romantic relationship and your partner was abusive, controlling, constantly bullying and undermining you and restricting your personal freedoms and ability to live your life, you would hopefully walk away or seek help. It shouldn't be any different when it happens in the workplace. Bullying often happens because of a need for power or a lack of self-awareness. They're not good enough reasons for you to let it go. Thirdly, if it's happening to you, it's probably happening to other people. And of course, speaking up is a sign of leadership and of doing what's right. Also consider that if you don't address it, then there's no evidence to support you down the track if it gets worse or if you end up experiencing a larger impact on your mental health. And yes, in some workplaces, this process is not well understood and it's badly handled. It should be actioned quickly and confidentially. I wish I could say that it will be a straightforward process. Unfortunately, many organisations, HR departments or managers simply don't have the experience or the knowledge, or the culture of an organisation is not where it should be, and raising a complaint can trigger negativity, the victim can be made to feel like they're doing something wrong, or people can respond with judgment or in some cases anger or threats. The simple fact is that sucks, but their lack of understanding or professionalism doesn't trump your rights. So do not justify behaviour that you are confident is wrong or confident that's even illegal. Know your rights, find support within the business or go external, but don't back down simply because other people are uncomfortable or ignorant. So what's the process? First, read up on your rights and responsibilities. Review any internal policies regarding the issues, since if the policy exists, it has to be adhered to. Knowing your rights and the process will help you manage the conversations and will help you to manage the responses that you get. Secondly, consider that the situation is a genuine case. Now, I'm in no way suggesting victim shaming here. If you feel harassed or bullied and it meets the definitions, then nobody can tell you how you actually feel. However, if you've never received feedback or coaching before, or never had a manager be directive with their expectations, it can feel uncomfortable or upsetting. But remember, reasonable management is not bullying. Thirdly, document everything. When things happen, what was said, if you report it, document who you reported it to, what the outcome of that conversation was, and what happens next. And when it comes to taking action, firstly, try speaking to the person, a calm, rational feedback conversation. Consider something structured like the Oscar model, but at the very least, explain how you feel from your perspective. Let them know how you feel, that you would like to understand if there's a problem, and that you would like to resolve it. Document the outcome. It doesn't make it right, but if the person was simply unaware that their behaviour was offensive, then feedback can resolve the situation quickly and easily. If you can't do that, or you're not comfortable, or nothing comes of it, then it's time to escalate it. So next, raise it to your next level line manager, or to theirs if it's about them, or go to the HR department. Again, it's important to raise the situation so that there is a record and so that it can get resolved. State the problem, state any steps that you've taken, state the impact that it's having on you. Ask what the process is to investigate or resolve it, clarify with them that you will be protected from any negative repercussions for raising a concern. Then what happens next depends really on the situation and the organisation. The person involved may be directed to come and discuss it with you or to clarify the situation and resolve it. The organisation may launch an investigation to confirm your story where they can and to seek other sources of information. They may set up a form of mediation between you and the other person involved, which is sort of a guided conversation with a neutral party who can help direct the conversation and find a solution. They may launch a training refresher for everyone and remind them of the expectations. That way, if something happens again, they've got much stronger grounds to take action on it. They may even just do something like rearrange the shifts to keep certain people from working together. If it's a serious breach and there's sufficient evidence, they may take action against the other person. So all you can do is cooperate and do your part to resolve the issue. The best case scenario is one where the behaviour changes, the issue is resolved, and the impact to the relationship is minimised. However, once again, in my personal opinion, the best outcome always involves you feeling supported and that the offensive event stops happening. If you can't get adequate resolution internally, then reach out to an external HR firm or to a number on your state's government website. As a manager, you need to be objective and you need to understand that it's the law. You need to provide a safe environment and you need to take fair action when things like this come up in your team. Follow the process, be objective, be supportive, and recognise that this is a legal and serious issue that needs to be resolved. You don't know the impact that harassment and bullying can have on someone, so do not take risks with it and do not dismiss it out of hand if someone raises a problem. Remember, the situation should be investigated professionally, confidentially, and impartially, so by someone not directly involved. Now, what if someone raises a concern about you? Perhaps you told a joke someone found offensive, or perhaps they accuse you of bullying or harassment. Now, to be honest, it's sort of the same process. If you did it, then recognise that regardless of your intention, someone was offended. Apologise, take steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. If it's gone further, then again, recognise that someone felt offended. Reflect on whether you can change how you act and take appropriate action. Be aware not to attack or victimise. But what if you didn't do anything? Firstly, be really sure that you're not confusing intent with perception. You may not have intended to bully or harass. However, if someone feels that way, then accept that they do indeed feel that way. Your role isn't to argue how they feel, it's to understand and to fix the situation. However, if you absolutely didn't do anything wrong, perhaps a malicious complaint made against you, then go directly to HR or to your manager so that there is a witness for your future actions. Then allow HR to seek evidence. They'll find out if there is any evidence or history to support what's been claimed. The complaint should be investigated as per normal with an impartial person. Evidence gathered, conversations documented. They'll align the situation with internal policies and procedures and to make sure that they've all been followed by everybody. Ultimately, since you've done nothing wrong, there should be no evidence. The business will take steps to prevent the problems happening in the future, or during the investigation, if they find evidence that a false claim was made, they can then take action on that. In all cases, whether you're the victim, the accused, or the manager, be impartial. Treat it seriously, investigate it, and keep control of the situation. So let's have a quick look at managing the risk of workplace bullying. Organisations can minimise the risk of workplace bullying by taking a proactive approach to identify early any unreasonable behaviour and situations that are likely to increase the risk of the bullying occurring. They can regularly consult with workers to find out if bullying is occurring and if there are factors likely to increase that risk in the workplace. They can set standards of workplace behaviour, for example through a code of conduct or workplace bullying policy. A really important and straightforward step employers can do is train the managers and the staff well. Set the expectations and the standards of behaviour and manage them. Most of us know what is clearly inappropriate behaviour and what behaviours are at risk of being harassing or bullying, and if you see it, call it out. Focus on developing a feedback culture and a culture where people are able to have open, respectful conversations. Implement clear reporting processes and make sure people know them. Make sure your response is timely, confidential, and taken seriously. And absolutely do not tolerate any form of victimisation in the organisation. If someone raises an issue or a concern, make sure that they are treated respectfully and there's no victimisation against that person. A training program for all employees when they join the company, and a regular review for all staff on their rights and responsibilities, the reporting process and the business expectations will have a huge impact on minimising these issues in the workplace. So of course, call us if you're interested in creating and implementing a program in your workplace too. Safe Work Australia, your state government and the Australian Human Rights Commission have a heap of really useful guides and documents to help you navigate and to support the legislation. Basically, you have a responsibility to be aware of the laws and policies that apply to you. As an employer, you have the responsibility to ensure that these are clearly communicated and supported within your business. And you have the right to be safe and treated fairly. I honestly look at harassment and bullying at work in the same way that I look at some types of domestic violence. The law is clear, and while many misunderstandings can be addressed locally, it doesn't mean that they're justified and that you should always have the confidence to stand up for your rights without fear of repercussions. Culture is created by the worst behaviour that we are willing to tolerate, so don't tolerate bullying and harassment. It's morally wrong, and quite simply, it's illegal. So thanks for tuning in. Legislation can be an overwhelming space. It's worth reaching out to a HR or legal expert for support. Always check the most updated policies and legislation and actively champion both the rights and the responsibilities that these rules encompass. Please leave comments below to share your experience with people, and if you're interested in some training for your team, please feel free to reach out to us directly via our website. The details are included in the description below. Thanks again for watching and have a great day.